They say there are things buried deep in the earth. Not just bones but secrets. In a forgotten village shrouded by mist and ancient trees, a tradition was kept alive. Dark, silent, forbidden. A tradition so chilling that even those who practiced it refused to speak its name aloud. This is the story of Nyarai, and the night she learned the terrible truth hidden beneath the soil she called home. Mapong was a place untouched by time. Hidden beyond the baobab forests of southern Africa, it was a village few outsiders knew existed. The villagers lived simple lives, farming, weaving, telling stories by firesides that flickered until dawn. But Mapong had a rule, old as the stones. When the drums sound at midnight, no door shall open, no foot shall step outside. No one explained why. No one dared ask. Nyarai, a 17-year-old girl with fiery eyes and an even fierier spirit, was growing restless. She hated rules that made no sense. Why should the night belong to fear? Why were whispers always cut short when she asked about the midnight drums? Her grandmother, Gogo Marimo, would only say, "There are things beneath Mapong that must never be disturbed." But one night, one fateful night, curiosity dug deeper than fear. It started as a whisper on the wind, a low, steady thump. Thump. Thump, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The drums of Mapong. Midnight was near. Villagers hurried, bolting their doors, dousing their fires, pulling children into bed. The air grew thick, heavy. Even the insects fell silent. Nyarai sat by her small window, staring out into the darkness. Her heart raced. She had to know. Was it just a tradition? Or was there something real out there? Gripping the worn amulet her mother had given her, a small bone carved with strange markings, Nyarai made a decision that would change her fate forever. She opened her door. At first, there was nothing but mist curling over the dirt paths. And shadows. Figures moving in slow procession, draped in heavy cloaks, faces hidden behind bone masks. They carried torches and something else. Something heavy. A mound covered in a faded cloth. Nyrai's breath caught. From her hiding place behind the old mango tree, she watched them approach the sacred clearing, the place no child was allowed to go. The bawo, the ancient burial ground. They laid the mound down. One of the figures pulled back the cloth, revealing a young woman, no older than 20, eyes wide open in terror, mouth gagged with woven grass. She was alive, and struggling. Before Nyarai could scream, before she could move, the villagers began to dig. The cloaked figures, people she recognized now as the village elders, dug a shallow grave by hand. The young woman, whom Nyarai recognized as Chipo, the potter's daughter, fought against her bindings, eyes pleading in the darkness. No one spoke. No prayers were said. The earth was cruel, swallowing her inch by inch as the elders shoveled the red soil over her writhing body. Tears streamed down Nyrai's face. Why would they do this? Suddenly, a cold hand gripped her shoulder. She spun around, and found herself face to face with her grandmother. "Come," Gogo Marimo hissed. "Before they see you." Pulled through the mist, half running, half dragged, Nyarai barely managed to glance back, just as the last handful of soil covered Chipo's terrified face. The drums fell silent. The ground, once disturbed, looked as if nothing had happened. Back inside their hut, the old woman barred the door, muttering prayers under her breath. Nyarai shook with anger and fear. "Why did they do that?" she screamed. "She was alive. You buried her alive." Gogo Marimo sat heavily on the ground, her face etched with sorrow. "You were never meant to see this," she whispered. And then, for the first time in Nyrai's life, Gogo told the truth of Mapong. Long ago, the village had been cursed. An ancient spirit, wronged by the greed of men, demanded living sacrifices to appease its anger. If the offering was not made every 10 years, the spirit would rise and devour the entire village, body and soul. The elders had made a pact. Sacrifice one to save many. "It is a wicked tradition," Gogo said, her voice shaking. "But if we break it, we all die." But Nyarai, proud, stubborn Nyarai, refused to accept it. "There has to be another way," she said. That night, as the village slept under the heavy shroud of guilt and silence, Nyarai made a silent vow. She would end the tradition no matter what it cost her. Little did she know the spirit of the earth, the one buried beneath Mapong, had already felt her defiance, and was watching. And it was hungry. That night sleep eluded Nyarai. Whenever her eyelids fluttered shut, she saw Chipo's wide, terrified eyes. Felt the weight of the earth pressing down on her chest. She awoke gasping, dirt filling her mouth, choking her. It was just a dream. Or was it? From somewhere beyond the village, a faint sound reached her ears, a muffled cry, a desperate pounding. As if someone were trying to claw their way out from the ground. She clutched her amulet tighter. It pulsed with an unnatural heat against her skin. Something was calling to her. Something buried. But not dead. The next morning, under the bright, lying sun, Mapong seemed normal. Children played. Women bartered in the market. Men repaired their fishing nets by the river. But the air tasted different to Nyarai. Thick with secrets. She couldn't let it go. With her childhood friend Tafra, a boy as bold as he was reckless, she hatched a plan. "Tonight," she whispered, "we dig." Tafra's eyes widened in fear, but he nodded. He had heard the drums too. He had seen the cloaked figures. And like Nyarai, he wanted answers. That night, armed with nothing but crude spades and the courage of the foolish, they crept to the sacred clearing. The air was colder here. The trees leaned inward, as if trying to whisper warnings they couldn't speak. At the center of the clearing, the earth looked untouched, smooth, undisturbed. But Nyarai remembered exactly where the mound had been. They dug. At first, the soil yielded easily, as if it wanted to give up its dead. But deeper down, the earth grew heavy, resistant, clinging to its secret. The amulet around Nyarai's neck burned hotter with every shovelful. And that, their spades struck something solid. A woven mat. Hand. Pale, dirty, clawed from frantic digging. It was Chipo. Still warm. Still breathing. Barely. They hauled Chipo out, gasping and coughing up mud. Her eyes fluttered open, wild, unseeing. "The earth," she rasped. "It knows." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered, a tremor like a heartbeat. From the shadows at the edge of the clearing, whispers rose. Dozens of voices speaking no human tongue. The trees groaned as if alive. The air turned bitter, the smell of rotting leaves and blood filling their nostrils. Tafra grabbed Nyrai's arm. "We have to go." But Chipo clutched Nyrai's ankle with surprising strength. "No," she hissed. "It will follow." It is awake now. A deep moan echoed from the earth, the sound of something ancient. Something hungry. They stumbled back into the village, Chipo half carried between them. But they didn't make it far. A ring of villagers blocked their path. Elders, warriors, mothers, faces hard, eyes hollow. At their head stood Chief Mandebvu, staff of ebony wood in hand. "You fools," he spat. "You have broken the pact." Nyarai stood tall despite her fear. "You buried her alive. You call this tradition. It's murder." The chief's face twisted. "Better one life than all. The spirit demands sacrifice." Behind them, the forest shuddered again, and a sound like laughter, cruel mocking, slithered through the mist. "Now," Chief Mandebvu said grimly, "we must offer 3. Before Nyarai could react, rough hands seized her, Tafra and Chipo. "The spirit's hunger has been stirred," the chief declared. "And it will not be sated easily." The villagers dragged them toward the bawo, the cursed clearing. Nyarai fought, screamed, begged. But it was useless. The village had made its choice. As they reached the clearing, the earth itself seemed to pulse in excitement. The elders began to dig 3 fresh graves. The drums, those cursed drums, began again, faster this time, wild and frenzied. In the swirling mist, Nyarai thought she saw figures dancing. Not villagers, but things with twisted faces and long, grasping fingers. The spirit was coming. and it was eager. The villagers worked feverishly, digging under the command of Chief Mandebvu. The clearing pulsed with unnatural light, a dim greenish glow seeping from the disturbed earth. Nyarai thrashed in her captor's grip. "Please," she cried. "This will not save you. It will only make it stronger." No one listened. Their faces were carved from stone, their eyes blank. Even her own mother stood silently among them, her expression unreadable. As they were forced toward the open pits, Chipo suddenly stiffened. Her body jerked unnaturally, and her eyes rolled back, showing only the whites. A low voice, not hers, spoke from her lips. "You broke the pact. You stirred me. Now you will feed me." The villagers froze. Chipo's body slumped, but she pointed a trembling finger at the chief. "The first betrayal was yours, Mandebvu." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The chief's face went pale. Nyarai seized the moment. What betrayal? What does she mean? Tafra, bleeding from a split lip, managed to choke out. What if the spirit isn't what they told us? An old woman, frail and bent, pushed her way forward. It was Gogo Meta, the oldest in the village, long thought senile. She spoke, voice quivering but strong. Long ago the spirit was no god. It was a protector, a guardian of the forest. But Mandebvu's ancestor betrayed it, spilling innocent blood for greed. The villagers murmured. The spirit was cursed to hunger forever, not by its nature, but because of our sin. The earth shook violently, tossing several villagers to the ground. Gogo Meta raised her arms. You think burying the innocent saves us? Well, it only deepens the spirit's thirst. Mandebvu roared. Enough. The pact must be honored. But now doubt spread like wildfire. Eyes turned from the prisoners toward the chief. Seizing the confusion, Tafra broke free, pulling Nyarai and Chipo along. They dashed into the thick forest, dodging grasping hands. Branches tore at their skin. The drums grew louder, now sounding from everywhere at once, as if the trees themselves beat them. Behind them, the villagers shouted and cursed. In front of them a path opened, a path that hadn't been there before, lit by ghostly lights. Chipo staggered but pointed. This way. It calls. They had no choice but to follow. The path led them to a cavern, hidden beneath a knotted, ancient baobab tree. Carvings, strange, sinuous symbols, covered its entrance. The air stank of decay and old magic. Inside, the walls pulsed like a living thing. Whispers crawled over their skin. Gasping, Nyarai helped Chipo down the stone steps carved into the earth. At the cavern's heart, an altar rose, black stone slick with blood older than memory. Above it, etched into the ceiling, was the truth. A story in images, of betrayal, sacrifice, and the spirit's corruption. Once a guardian, now a prison of rage and sorrow. Chipo collapsed at the altar, her body convulsing. Tafra cried out, but Nyarai held him back. Let her be. She knows what to do. Or at least, Nyarai hoped so. Chipo's mouth opened in a silent scream. The cavern darkened. The spirit materialized. A mass of shadows and sorrow, shifting shapes, hundreds of hollow eyes blinking from its form. It spoke in a voice like cracking earth. You have awakened me fully. You have fed me your fear. Now, offer your lives, or perish. Nyarai stepped forward, trembling. No, she said. Not more death. We offer you truth. And freedom. The spirit paused. The shadows flickered. Explain, it hissed. Nyarai pointed at the images carved above. You were betrayed. Twisted. You are not meant to hunger. We will cleanse the blood debt. The spirit's many mouths laughed, a terrible, mournful sound. You would risk yourselves for those who enslaved me. Tafra spoke up. They enslaved us too. Silence. Then, slowly, the spirit withdrew, pulling into a single looming form. It extended a long, jagged finger toward the altar. Then swear it. Swear to break the chain. Swear, with blood. Nyarai stepped forward, feeling the spirit's gaze burn into her soul. Chipo and Tafra stood back, silent, their faces lit only by the sickly green glow of the cavern. The altar before her pulsed. A long, jagged dagger appeared atop it, black iron, ancient, humming with buried power. The spirit whispered, "Blood remembers. Blood binds." Nyarai's hands trembled as she picked up the dagger. The sharpness bit her palm before she even pressed down. She sliced a deep line across her hand, letting her blood drip onto the altar. The stone hissed, swallowing her offering. The spirit leaned closer. "Speak the vow," it commanded. In a voice barely louder than a breath, Nyarai spoke. "By my blood I break the chain. By my soul I set you free. By my life I bear your wrath. Until justice is done." The cavern shook. The spirit's form shattered into 1,000 screaming fragments, then reformed, smaller, tighter, like a coiled snake. It smiled. Or something close to it. "It begins." As they turned to leave the cavern, the ground above them split open. Voices shouted down. Torches blazed. The villagers had found them. At the head of the mob was Chief Mandebvu, flanked by warriors. But not just warriors. Strange figures dressed in red cloaks, their faces hidden behind carved wooden masks. "The red mouths," whispered Chipo. "The ones who serve the hunger willingly." Nyarai felt the spirit writhe inside her, a whispering presence guiding her steps. Mandebvu pointed a trembling finger. "Seize them. They have cursed us all." Tafra raised his fists, but Nyarai pulled him back. "We cannot fight them alone. We need to expose the truth." The spirit chuckled in her mind. "Then let the dead speak." Nyarai raised her bleeding hand. The blood from the altar still stained it, glowing faintly. She slammed it against the cavern wall. A deep rumble echoed through the earth. From the darkness behind them, shapes stirred. Hands clawed out from the stone. Skeletons, rotted corpses, ancient warriors, the victims of the tradition, rose. Their eyes burned with cold, blue fire. The villagers screamed in terror as the dead poured out of the cavern. But the dead did not attack the villagers blindly. They went for the masked ones, the red mouths, first. The masked figures shrieked and fought, but they were dragged down into the earth. Nyarai stepped into the light of the torches. The villagers fell silent. She raised her voice. "See who your true masters are. See who feeds the spirit with your fear." The ground cracked open again. And from the largest grave near the altar, an old chief rose. The ghost was enormous, 7 feet tall, with bones gleaming like polished ivory. Its hollow eyes locked onto Mandebvu. "You bear my blood," it croaked. "And my sin." Mandebvu stumbled back, falling to his knees. The ghost spoke to the crowd. "We chained the spirit to hunger so we could rule without fear. We buried the innocent to silence the past. And so the hunger grew." The villagers wept openly now. Mothers clutched their children. The red mouths lay dead or dying. Mandebvu tried to crawl away. But the ghost's skeletal hand seized his throat. "You will be the last." In a final, terrible shriek, Mandebvu's body withered in the ghost's grip, aging decades in seconds. When the ghost released him, he collapsed, nothing but dust and rags. The spirit inside Nyarai sighed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "One debt is paid," it whispered. The villagers fell to their knees before Nyarai. "Free us," they begged. "Teach us." But Nyarai felt the spirit's hunger was not yet satisfied. The chain was broken, but the spirit was still bound to her now. And its vengeance had only just begun. Nyarai stood motionless, the spirit swirling around her like an invisible tempest. The villagers knelt at her feet, their once stern faces now crumbled with regret and fear. She could feel the hunger of the spirit growing, an insatiable need gnawing at her soul. Her body had become a vessel, a fragile container for an ancient force that had been buried too long. "It is not over," the spirit whispered. "You think you are free. You think the past has been purged? Well, the blood ties you. The land will demand its payment. She clenched her fists. Mandebvu was dead. The red mouths were gone. But the curse had not been broken. It had only shifted. The spirit no longer craved power. It craved the final vengeance. The villagers, still kneeling, had heard the words of the ghost. They knew that Mandebvu's sins were their sins. But they also knew that the earth, the land they had taken for granted, was not done with them. The chains were broken, yes. But the land's debt was far older than any of them could imagine. That night a storm raged. The earth trembled beneath their feet. It felt like the very spirit of the land was waking up. Nyarai stood at the edge of the village, staring out at the wild sky. The wind howled, almost as if it were calling to her. Tafra and Chipo approached quietly. Both were now fully aware of the fate that had been thrust upon Nyarai, a fate that could not be undone. She was the last one left to carry the burden. "We can't fight it, can we?" Chipo asked, her voice trembling with fear. "The spirit, it is too strong, too ancient." Nyarai closed her eyes, feeling the power of the spirit pulsing within her, a dark, unrelenting force. She had fought it, yes, but in the end it was her blood, her lineage that had summoned it back to life. "I don't know," Nyarai whispered. I think the only way to stop it is to make the ultimate sacrifice." Chipo gasped. "You mean, you would give your life?" Nyarai nodded, her expression grim. "The land has fed on our suffering for too long. I can feel it, the anger, the hatred, the pain. The only way to sever the connection is to return what has been taken." The wind howled louder. "No," Tafra protested. "You cannot." But Nyarai turned to face him, her eyes full of resolve. "There is no other way, Tafra. I have seen the truth. The spirit is not just a force. It is the very blood of this land. And it will never be free until the curse is paid for by the one who called it forth." The villagers gathered at the edge of the great cave, where Nyarai had first broken the chains. The storm above raged, crackling with energy. Thunder clapped in the distance, but Nyarai was unmoved. She had already made her decision. The altar stood before her, the same blackened stone that had once tasted her blood. Now it would receive the final payment. As she walked toward it, the earth trembled again, as if the land itself knew what was coming. Tafra tried to stop her, his hands gripping her arm. "Nyarai, please. Don't do this." But she pulled away, her gaze fixed on the altar. "This is the only way. The land, the spirit will never be free until the debt is settled." She climbed onto the altar, placing her hands on the cold stone. The spirit's whispers filled her ears, dark and haunting. "You are the key. Chain. The blood will flow. The past will return. The hunger will cease." The villagers watched, helpless, as Nyarai raised the dagger, the same one she had used to break the chains. But this time she would not be cutting her palm. This time she would cut her heart. As she prepared for the sacrifice, her thoughts turned to her people, to her ancestors. She was doing this not just for her but for everyone. The land's curse would finally be lifted. With one swift motion, she drove the dagger deep into her chest. The moment the blade pierced her heart, the earth shuddered violently. The sky above cracked open with a flash of blinding light, and for a moment the world held its breath. Nyarai's body jerked, and the spirit roared in her mind, a sound that shook the heavens. But then something unexpected happened. As her blood pooled on the altar, it did not just vanish. It spread, a deep, rich red that seemed to reach out, embracing the land, the trees, the earth. The storm quieted. The earth stopped trembling. And in that silence, Nyarai body began to glow. Her spirit had merged with the land. She had become one with the very essence of the curse. But something more miraculous occurred. The spirit's hunger faded. No longer demanded blood. No longer sought revenge. The villagers stood in awe. The land, once heavy with the weight of its sins, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The next morning, Nyrai's body was gone. The villagers found only the dagger, still embedded in the altar. But they knew what had happened. Nyarai had sacrificed herself, and in doing so, she had saved them all. The land was free. The spirit had been quelled. And though Nyarai was no longer among them, her spirit lived on in the earth, in the trees, in the wind. Her legacy would never be forgotten. "May the land never forget her sacrifice," the elder whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As the villagers paid their respects, they felt the earth beneath their feet, a land that had been redeemed, a land that had been freed from the curse of generations. Nyrai's legacy will echo through the ages, as the villagers pass down the story of the girl who freed the land with her blood. The story speaks of the price of power, the importance of sacrifice, and the eternal connection between the living and the dead.